Hey everybody, this is Brother Jake Fry. I'm the pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church, and thank you so much for tuning in for this week's edition of the Midweek Word. Um, First of all, let me thank you all. Several of you last week gave me your thoughts about whether I should do a video edition of the Midweek Word or if I should move to audio. And I think most people agreed that audio was either fine with them or it was their preferred way of hearing the midweek word every week. So we're going to try this for a little while and see how it goes, just doing audio only. It will probably fit into my schedule a little better, just to be honest with you, because I've traveled, made extra trips to church to record videos and things like that. And you have to, find something to wear and look half decent if you're going to stand in front of a camera. And so now I can record these at home and fit them into my schedule a little easier with an audio edition. Also, if you don't know me that well and you've been listening to the Midweek Word, we're expecting my second daughter to be born any day now. And so when she gets here, it's going to be a whole new schedule. And so this will fit into that a little better. So we're going to try audio edition. I just ask you to bear with me a little bit while I try to fine tune some things and get a better grip on how to make a podcast channel and all those different aspects of having an audio edition, because if we're going to do this, we want to do it right. So, but anyways, thank you so much for joining us for the Midweek Word for this week. And today, the Midweek Word is going to come from Genesis chapter 50, beginning in verse 20. Now, before I read this verse to you, I want to give you a little background information, because one of my favorite passages in all of the Bible is Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And I'm sure you know it well. You've clung to it for comfort, and I have too. And this is what Romans 8:28 says. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. It just so happens that thousands of years before Paul wrote that verse in the scriptures, in the book of Romans, there was a man named Joseph who believed the same thing. And that is because I believe that Paul and Joseph believed in the same God, just like we believe in the same God they have believed in. And so Joseph says this to his brothers in Genesis 50, verse 20. I want to read this, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the background that goes into this. Genesis 50, verse 20 says this: As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So let me give you a little background information about why this is being said. Joseph was one of 12 brothers, and Joseph was a little cocky, to be honest. He said some things to his brothers that he shouldn't have said. He had dreams about how all of his brothers would be bowing before him, and he brought it up in a way that probably seemed like a brat to his other brothers. He had these dreams and visions from the Lord, and he was also the favorite, pretty much, of the father, and their father was Jacob. So when you hear about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph is Jacob's son. So we're talking about the great grandson of Abraham. So Joseph was eventually sold into slavery by his brothers. So they were going to take him out to kill him, and instead they sold him into slavery and made out like that he had been murdered by, killed by a wild animal. You remember They took his coat of many colors that Jacob had made for him and covered it in the blood of an animal and made Jacob think that Joseph was lost forever, that he had died. Through a series of several events that we won't necessarily have the time to go into, Joseph uh, is able to interpret a few dreams in the prison, and because he's been thrown into prison because he had worked his way up in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife framed him for sexual assault, and he was thrown into prison. And through some events where he interprets some dreams, Pharaoh in Egypt now brings him to second in command. And because of that, uh, Joseph is able to interpret these dreams and give prophecy that there's going to be a famine in the land, and so that they need to spend a few years saving up grain, saving up food. And of course, the famine came, and because God had used Joseph to do this, many people survived that would have absolutely died, including his brothers who originally sold him into slavery. So his brothers did something absolutely terrible to him, and it's not just like they hurt his feelings or they stabbed him in the back or something like that. They did something that absolutely changed his life. It scarred him in some ways. Listen, Joseph had the scars to prove what his brothers did to him. His life was marked and changed forever by the actions of his brothers. But the Lord reconciled him and his brothers. And now we get to Genesis chapter 50. And Jacob, their father, has died. And now all of Joseph's brothers are scared because they're thinking, oh man, Joseph is going to kill every one of us now. Our dad's dead. He has no reason not to. And this is what Joseph says to them. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Now, what's the point of all this? Why are we bringing this up today? Well, if you're like me, you have probably experienced some things in your life that happened to you by the hands of other people, and it changed your life. Now, maybe it wasn't as significant as Joseph being thrown into slavery by his own brothers, or sold into slavery by his own brothers, but it's pretty significant. I know in my own life, I have what I call landmark events, that after those events took place, I was never the same. And some of those events are things that no one can help, and they're not necessarily evil. The passing of loved ones is an example of that. My grandmother passed away of natural causes, but that's a landmark event for me. But what I'm really specifically talking about is when people hurt you. They have done things to you that have changed your life. Some of you listening today are probably struggling with the fact that you've been abused in some way. Maybe you've been abused in the past, or maybe you're being abused right now. Maybe you are dealing with some financial issues that came up out of nowhere, and you just don't know how the Lord is going to use this. But remember what we've read, that God uses all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And this is what Joseph said, as for you, you meant it for evil. His brothers meant evil towards him, but God used it for good. This is how good the Lord is to us. God can take the things that were meant to be evil against us and find the good in them. God can take the trials in your life that come up, that are unexpected, that are absolutely life-changing, and will leave a scar on you, and in some miraculous way, he's able to still find the glory out of it, to make you a better person because of it, to draw you closer to him. And so I want to encourage you today, if you are struggling right now uh, with whatever it may be, some kind of trial, uh, you've been hurt by someone very deeply, and you're really having a hard time coping with that. Remember that person may very well have meant it to be evil towards you, but God will use it for your good. I don't know exactly how He will do it. I don't know when He will do it, but God will use it for your good. He will make you a better person. Yes, if you're going through abuse, of course, take the steps you need to take to get out of that situation. Don't sit and let it continue to happen. Absolutely. But understand that God has not left you. God has always been with you, and God will take that which was meant for evil and He will use it for your good and for His glory. And that's just how good the Lord is. And you see, in the life of Joseph, that's what happened. If Joseph had not been sold into slavery, betrayed by his own brothers all those years ago, he would never have been made second in command to Pharaoh, and all of those people would have died because they would not have received a word from the Lord that there was going to be a famine. But because God used these things in his life, God made a mighty warrior, a mighty leader out of the man Joseph. And I want to encourage you that God has a mighty work to do in your life. So if you're struggling, keep your head up, because what was meant for evil to tear you down is going to be what God uses to build you up. This has been the Midweek Word. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Lord willing, we will see you next week and take in some more questions and answers. I'll see you next week.